The Fortingall Yew tree is located close to the geographical centre of Celtic Scotland. It lies at the entrance or portal to Glen Lyon, the longest and arguably the most spectacular glen in Scotland. Standing tall for over 5,000 years, this yew tree has watched the land change in ways we can hardly imagine. Before Christian monks and Pictish kings trod these lands, Druids gathered here. To them, the yew wasn't just a tree, it was a bridge to the afterlife, a symbol of immortality, and a part of their sacred geometry. The ancient Fortingall Yew carries the magical residue of that time, and so this tree has quite a story. Such is the reputation of this remarkable yew that in 1993 a sapling from this archaic tree was planted in Glastonbury Abbey. And monks from the Tibetan Buddhist monastery, Cymbeline in Dumfriesshire, Scotland, planted another sapling on Holy Island off the coast of Arran, Scotland. And more recently, cuttings were taken from the Fortingall Yew to be grown by the Forestry Commission at Roslin, another historical sacred site in Scotland. These yew cuttings will eventually be planted around the country at such places as the Arboretum at Scone Palace, the home of Scotland's Holy Stone. A coincidence? Methinks not. So why is the Fortingall Yew a holy tree? There has been a traditional association with the mythos of the sacred yew and the natural philosophy of the Celtic Druid Magi. The yew stood for sacred mystery in the Druid tradition. Yews were planted systematically about the places, often wells that held sacred truths, perhaps to awe votaries as much as because the trees themselves held sacred properties. In Druid tree language, it stood for the ovate grade, one who, specialised in learning concerning the mysteries, according to the Book of Druidry by Ross Nichols. In both the Druidic tradition of reincarnation and the later Christian doctrine of the resurrection, the yew was viewed as a natural emblem of everlasting life. And so Christian churches, they adopted the Druidic tradition of placing yew trees at their holy sites like churchyards. Why does this little village with its yew tree matter? The answer is sacred geometry, another specialty of the Druids, and then the Knights Templar. These were the first geomancers, those who understood the mystical alignment of nature, its energies and its patterns. These stones, part of a larger network of stone circles, weren't just for show. The Druids were far ahead of their time in understanding the geometric principles of the earth. Sacred geometry, the language of the universe, was at the core of their practices. The circles, like those dotting the Loch region near Fortingall, were sacred sites for rituals, where the cosmos and the earth aligned in perfect harmony. These stones also spoke to the advanced astronomical knowledge of the Druids, acting as calendars, marking the equinoxes, the solstices, and the cycles of the moon. As the centuries marched on, the Druidic ways began to fade into the shadows, giving way to Christianity. Now, one key moment, the arrival of Saint Columba, who famously visited King Bride of the Picts. The conversion of the Pictish court wasn't just political, it was spiritual. Bride and his people, who'd once consulted the Druids, now found a new faith. A faith that also revered the sacredness of the land and its geometry, though in a very different way. The Fortingall-based monk who gave us St. Columba. And here is yet another clue of the Fortingall mystery. Why did one of the most important monks of Celtic Britain move from Iona and set up a church in Fortingall? Adomnan of Iona, also known as Saint Adomnan or Adamnan, lived in the mid-7th century. He was the abbot of Iona from 679 to 704 and is best known as the author of Life of Columba. He wrote the hugely influential Law of Adomnan, the first book about fair treatment of prisoners. He wrote poetry and even a book on holy sites. As abbot, he was extremely influential in the wider affairs of a land that was still divided between Gaels, Picts, Britons and Angles. He forged especially strong links with King Aldfrith of Northumbria. Adomnan was also responsible for helping former Pope Server set up a Christian monastery on Loch Leven Island. The timing of setting up this special monastery, just as the Roman Catholic Church was shutting down Celtic churches in Scotland, well, it was not only a bold move, but he may have saved British Celtic Christianity by preserving it at Loch Leven. So rose the Culdees of Loch Leven. It is one of the greatest instances of humility on record, a pope becoming abbot of a Scottish Culdee monastery and fixing his seat in the island of Loch Leven, and all with the help from a monk in Fortingall. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You remember the Roman leader who washed his hands of Jesus, leading to the crucifixion, Pontius Pilate? There is an ancient belief that connects Pontius Pilate not just to Scotland, but specifically to Fortingall and the Menzies family, a prominent Scottish clan with a lineage stretching back to ancient times. Locals have passed this legend for 2 millennia now, and yet there is debate about the authenticity of the story. But I am leaning towards believing this one. It seems that between the Romans' first incursion into Britain and their later invasion, Caesar Augustus dispatched envoys to establish diplomatic relations with some of the important British and Caledonian chieftains. These included a Caledonian chieftain called Metillanus, whose stronghold was at the head of Glen. A member of the Roman delegation to Metillanus's tribe fathered a child with a Caledonian woman, Procula, and this child subsequently returned to Rome with his father and possibly his mother and was brought up as Pontius Pilate. The Gospel of St. Matthew is the only one to mention that before Jesus was brought before Pilate, his wife, Claudia Procula, sent a message to him saying that she had had a troubling dream and that he must not harm Jesus, but her words were unable to save Jesus. New evidence from France suggests that Mary of Bethany, also known as Mary Magdalene, was a close friend of Claudia Procula, who was a convert to the teaching of Jesus, and explains why she intervened with Pilate on behalf of Jesus. The legend further suggests that the ambassador's residence, known as the Roman camp, was located in the Appin na Mynerich, the lands owned by the Menzies family. But some say the legend that Pontius Pilate was born in Scotland has been exposed as an elaborate joke concocted by an aristocrat and his high society friends. A Scottish historian showed that the first public mention of the Roman governor's supposed link with the village of Fortingall in Perthshire was in the late 19th century, around the time that Sir Donald Currie, a shipping magnate, bought the Glenlyon estate in 1885. The historian believes the former MP for Perthshire and patron to writers such as Rudyard Kipling and Alfred Lord Tennyson invented the story as a prank with the help of his literary friends. Is it not far more likely that Currie learned of the history of Glenlyon when he bought it, thus revealing the history of the Menzies and Appin na Mynerich and its famous visitor? Finally, there is Cymbeline, the 1st century Druid king who arranged for the arrival of Joseph of Arimathea and Jesus' son James to his Druidic kingdom when they arrived in the earliest years of Christianity. How did Cymbeline know about Jesus' family? Might it be true then that one of the earliest Christians, the Druidic princess wife of Pontius Pilate from Fortingall, might have smoothed the way for the Holy Family to arrive in England with the help of another Druidic king? And so the circle of time continues. Fortingall, a place where the old Druidic wisdom once flourished, has become a symbol of spiritual evolution, where the ancient energies of the land still pulse beneath the surface. And at the heart of the Celtic kingdom is Fortingall, a sacred place with a sacred